According to the oldest stories, the creature wasn't born a monster, it became one, and that single detail changes everything. Imagine driving down an empty, desolate highway late at night, miles from the nearest town. In your headlights, you catch a glimpse of a large animal, perhaps a wolf or a coyote, pacing your vehicle. As you accelerate to 70 miles per hour, the animal easily keeps pace, its limbs moving with a strange, unnatural rhythm. Then, it rises. It continues to run alongside your car on its hind legs, staring directly through your window. But when you look into its eyes, they do not reflect the light like a wild beast. Its eyes look entirely, terrifyingly human, glowing with an unnatural, bright red luminescence in the dark. You have just encountered something that goes against the very laws of nature. The creature does not hunt people the way most monsters do. It does not stalk the woods looking for food to satisfy a biological hunger. Instead, it hunts to spread fear, sickness, and absolute chaos. The most unsettling part of this legend is not that a monster is hunting you in the dark. It is the shocking implication that the creature staring back at you was once a normal human being. It was once a member of a community, someone who willingly chose to embrace absolute darkness to manipulate the physical world. Yet, a profound mystery remains unanswered. If these entities were once human, why do they discard their humanity to wear the skins of dead predators? The truth behind their physical transformation has been heavily guarded for centuries, spoken of only in hushed, frightened whispers. And the full explanation, which we will uncover later, reveals a ritual so unthinkable that it defies all comprehension. But to understand what this creature truly is, we must first look at what happens when you cross its path. Those who claim to have seen it describe an entity that exists between worlds. In the daylight, they walk among regular people, hiding their true nature behind a human face. But at night, they shed their human form. They tap on the windows of isolated homes, scratch at locked doors, and climb onto roofs, bringing a heavy, suffocating dread to anyone trapped inside. But that wasn't the strangest part. The most chilling accounts do not involve seeing the creature at all. They involve hearing it. These beings possess an uncanny ability to perfectly mimic the sounds of the innocent. People have reported standing on the edge of a dark forest and hearing the distinct sound of a baby crying in the trees, or the voice of a loved one calling out for help. It is a psychological trap designed to lure the compassionate out into the darkness where they are vulnerable. However, the legend becomes even more mysterious when you realize that this is not just an internet ghost story. This entity belongs to a very real, very ancient belief system. And for the people who know the truth about its origins, it is not a myth. It is a daily reality. Where did the legend come from? To answer that, we must travel to the American Southwest, into the vast, beautiful, and isolated lands of the Navajo Nation. In the traditions of the Daini, the Navajo people, there is a deep understanding of the delicate balance of the universe. Healing, protection, and spiritual harmony are guided by respected community leaders known as medicine men and women. These healers spend lifetimes learning complex ceremonies to cure the sick and protect their people from harm. But there is a dark mirror to this world. If there is medicine meant to heal, there is also magic meant to destroy. The creature we are talking about is known in the Navajo language as the naaldlooshii. Translated directly, it means, by means of it, he goes on all fours. It is a highly specific type of harmful witch, known generally as an naaldlooshii, a practitioner of dark, manipulative magic. Most people never hear what happened next in the ancient stories. These witches were not always evil. In many accounts, they began their lives as healers, spiritual guides, or powerful medicine men who learned the secrets of the universe to help their tribes. But absolute power can corrupt absolutely. Seduced by the prospect of limitless control, these individuals chose to pervert their sacred knowledge. They turned their backs on their people and twisted their healing ceremonies into dark, destructive rites. They are the ultimate antithesis of Navajo cultural values. They represent pure selfishness in a culture that values community above all else. Yet one detail doesn't fit. You cannot simply decide to become a naaldlooshii. You cannot study it in secret and magically transform it into a wolf overnight. The threshold between a corrupt human and a supernatural shapeshifter requires a toll. The truly unsettling part comes later. To unlock the supernatural power necessary to bend bone and flesh, the witch must cross a line from which there is no return. They must prove their absolute loyalty to the darkness, and the price of admission is unthinkable. Why were people so afraid of it? It wasn't just because the creature could run faster than a vehicle or mimic a human voice. The terror stems from what the creature had to do to gain those powers. To become a naaldlooshii, an individual must be initiated into a secret society through the witchery way. This dark path demands the highest form of sacrifice. The initiate must intentionally murder a close blood relative, most often a sibling. This heinous taboo act permanently severs their connection to humanity. It is believed that this ultimate betrayal is what grants them their terrifying supernatural abilities. Once this dark initiation is complete, the witch gains the power to transform into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. They typically choose the forms of apex predators or scavengers associated with the night wolves: coyotes, foxes, cougars, bears, or owls. They choose their animal form based on the specific abilities they need for their dark work, whether it is the immense strength of a bear, the stealth of a fox, or the speed of a coyote. Because they rely on the pelts of these animals to initiate their physical transformations, a strict cultural taboo exists. In traditional Navajo culture, it is considered extremely dangerous to wear the pelt of any predatory animal. But there was a problem. If these witches rely on stealth and disguise, how do they actually inflict harm without being caught? What happened afterward changed the legend forever. The physical transformation is only the beginning of their dark arsenal. They possess superhuman speed, the ability to control the minds of their victims through direct eye contact, and the power to read thoughts. However, the legend becomes much darker when you look at the physical weapons they carry. Their most feared tool is not a physical claw or a magical spell. It is a substance so toxic that its very existence is considered a profound desecration. The true power of the naaldlooshii lies in an unholy substance known as ontin, often translated as corpse powder or corpse poison. This grim weapon is reportedly created from the desecrated remains of human bodies. According to the lore, the witches gather in dark secluded caves to perform dark ceremonial rites that are twisted mockeries of traditional healing dances. Here, they grind human bone into a fine, deadly dust. Under the cover of night, the shapeshifter will climb to the roof of an isolated home. They will wait for the family inside to fall asleep. And then they will drop this corpse powder down the chimney, or blow it directly into the faces of their sleeping victims. The result is a sudden, unexplainable sickness, physical wasting, and ultimately, death. For generations, these witches were blamed for every unexplained tragedy that struck the community. Sudden deaths, the loss of livestock, devastating droughts, and failed crops were all attributed to the unseen influence of the naaldlooshii. The paranoia was absolute. Anyone could be a witch hiding in plain sight. That should have been the end of the story. A localized cultural belief used to explain the harsh realities and sudden tragedies of life in the unforgiving desert. But what most people don't realize is that this fear did not remain confined to whispered stories. When a community is pushed to the absolute brink of starvation and despair, the fear of hidden monsters can manifest in the physical world. And that is exactly what happened in the late 19th century. The legend stepped out of the shadows and triggered a devastating, real, world tragedy. To understand the darkest chapter of this legend, we must look at a historical trauma that shattered the Navajo Nation. In the 1860s, the United States government waged a brutal campaign against the Navajo people. Their homes, crops, and livestock were systematically destroyed. Starved into submission, thousands of men, women, and children were forced on a horrific 300-mile death march known as the Long Walk. They were relocated to a barren, disease-ridden internment camp at Bosque Redondo in New Mexico. The conditions were apocalyptic. The water was toxic. Crops failed, and diseases ravaged the imprisoned population. Surrounded by death and endless suffering, the people believed their world was ending. In this atmosphere of profound despair, a dark rumor began to spread. Some believed that certain individuals had turned to the witchery way, using the dark magic of the naaldlooshii to escape the camp or exact revenge. After 4 agonizing years, the government admitted the internment was a failure. The Treaty of 1868 allowed the surviving Navajo to return to their ancestral homeland, but the psychological scars remained. The society was fractured. Some families received federal aid and rebuilt their wealth, while others starved, creating deep social divides fueled by resentment and jealousy. The truly unsettling part is what happened when this collective trauma boiled over. In 1878, a terrifying discovery was made on the reservation. A hidden cache of dark witch artifacts was unearthed. But the artifacts themselves were not the most shocking part. The tools of dark magic had been deliberately wrapped inside a physical copy of the Treaty of 1868. To the community, this was undeniable proof that the witches were trying to destroy their newly reclaimed freedom and sabotage the very survival of the tribe. The paranoia erupted into violence. In an event known as the Navajo Witch Purge of 1878, the community turned on itself to root out the perceived evil. Accusations flew. Leaders pointed fingers at political rivals. By the time the dust settled, 40 suspected witches had been killed in a desperate, tragic attempt to restore balance and harmony to a broken world. The legend had caused real blood to spill. For decades afterward, the stories retreated back into the shadows. The fear remained, but it was kept quiet, hidden from the outside world. But history rarely stays buried. Over a century later, the modern world would discover the legend of the shape-shifting witch. But they would get the story completely, dangerously wrong. What most people get wrong about this creature is almost everything. If you spend any time reading scary stories on the internet, listening to paranormal podcasts, or watching horror movies, you have likely heard the term. But the creature presented in modern pop culture bears almost no resemblance to the corrupted healers of Navajo tradition. In the late 1990s, a story broke about a property in Utah where a family experienced bizarre phenomena: mutilated cattle, strange lights in the sky, and giant wolves that were completely unfazed by close-range gunfire. The media quickly dubbed the property Skinwalker Ranch, despite the fact that the paranormal events reported there had little to do with traditional Navajo witchcraft. But the name stuck, and the internet took hold of it. Suddenly, anonymous writers on forums were churning out thousands of fictional horror stories about pale, emaciated, hairless monsters lurking in the forests of North America. They called these fictional monsters skinwalkers, but they were inadvertently mixing the Navajo legend with the Wendigo, a completely different spirit of winter and starvation from Algonquian folklore. They also blended in artificial internet monsters like the Rake. The result was a massive, tangled web of misinformation. The deeply specific, tragic, and culturally significant Navajo witch was reduced to a generic, creeping ghoul used for cheap scares. The appropriation reached the highest levels of global pop culture. In 2016, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, published a fictional history of magic in North America. In her story, she claimed that the legend of the naaldlooshii was actually just a misunderstanding. She wrote that they were noble Native American wizards who transformed into animals to escape persecution, and that non-magical medicine men had made up the evil rumors out of jealousy. The backlash from the Native American community was swift and fierce. Scholars like Dr. Adrienne Keene pointed out the deep disrespect of taking a living, serious and highly taboo religious belief, and reducing it to a prop for a billionaire's fantasy franchise. The depiction erased the true meaning of the legend and insulted the real. Historical medicine men who had fought to keep their culture alive through centuries of oppression. When Native voices asked the internet to stop misusing their sacred and taboo words, the internet responded with a strange rebellion. To avoid accusations of cultural theft, podcast hosts and online writers began inventing absurd, mocking nicknames for the creature, such as the Fleshgate or the Flesh Pedestrian. This only deepened the insult. To the Navajo, this is not a fictional monster that you can rename for a scary story. It is a representation of the darkest capabilities of the human soul. So, with all this misinformation spreading across the globe, a massive question remains. Why don't the Navajo people simply step forward, correct the record, and tell the world exactly what the creature is? The answer to that question is the most terrifying part of the entire legend. Why the legend still survives today is intrinsically tied to why it is so rarely discussed. In modern society, we believe that bringing a fear into the light takes away its power. We believe that analyzing a monster removes its teeth. But in traditional Navajo belief, the exact opposite is true. Words have power. Language is not just a way to communicate. It is a force that shapes reality. The Navajo people do not speak of the naaldlooshii to outsiders. They rarely discuss it among themselves, and they absolutely never speak of it after the sun goes down. This is not simply out of respect for an old tradition. It is a matter of survival. According to their deeply held beliefs, the witches are always listening. If you speak their name, if you discuss their dark rituals, or if you talk about their origins, you draw their attention. Speaking of them is considered an invitation. You become a beacon in the spiritual darkness, signaling to the witches that you are aware of them. And once they know you are looking for them, they will come looking for you. This is why the culture remains silent, while the internet screams their ancient words. The silence is a shield. The Navajo philosophy is built upon the concept of Hoshoa, state of harmony, beauty, and balance. The naaldlooshii is the physical embodiment of the destruction of that harmony. They are a reminder that evil is not some abstract, distant force. Evil is a choice made by human beings. It is the decision to cause pain for personal gain. The legend of the shapeshifter endures not because it is a fun monster story, but because it represents a universal truth about the human condition. Every society has those who use their power to heal, and those who use their power to destroy. So the next time you are driving down a dark, empty road, and you see an animal pacing your car in the shadows, remember the ancient warning. Do not whistle into the dark. Do not call out to the unknown. And most importantly, do not speak its name. Because out there, in the vast, empty silence of the night, something might just be listening.